Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RAMP, Real Access Motivates Progress, live Wednesday night podcast. Again, we have another great show to you tonight, but just a reminder that if you are watching us live, you can type in your questions and we will try to get to as many as we can while we're live today, as long as we are getting through the conversations that we need to go. So, without further ado, I am going to introduce to you to the brand new director of the Rhode Island Office of Healthy Aging, Marina Samiti. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Tina. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I am so excited. I know so many people want to know all about you and what you do since you have now taken over. It's been what, a little over a month or almost 2 months now?
2 months now. Yes, just about two.
Wow. So tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure, I'm happy to. So, as you said, I'm 2 months on the job at the director of the Office of Healthy Aging. And the Office of Healthy Aging in Rhode Island is an agency within the Department of Human Services. And my role by state law is to be an advocate, to advocate for Rhode Islanders who are over the age of 50 and Rhode Islanders with disabilities, to be sure that as a state, we are making sure that they're meeting their basic needs, that vulnerable individuals have resources that they require, but also that people have an opportunity to thrive, to be doing really exciting and innovative things as they age and as they have differing abilities, and that we create communities that support that. So I've been here for just a bit of time, but I am a lifelong Rhode Islander. I'm one of those who is third generation. I occasionally trip into Sinconk or something, but I'm a Rhode Islander. And my work has been in advocacy. For nearly 20 years now, I've worked as an advocate for primarily low income Rhode Islanders, doing direct service, like working at a food pantry and making food bags, making sure people have food to eat, making sure that new arrivals to our country have a way to acclimate, to take the citizenship test, to learn to speak English, after school programming. I spent about a decade running the state's SNAP outreach project, used to be known as food
Oh, wow.
stamps. And so in that work, I actually I had no idea that this would be so important today, but in that work, I went to every senior center in the state, most of the senior high rises. I went to the congregate meal sites and Meals on Wheels, and also Head Start classrooms and hospital waiting rooms, to make sure that people knew that there were nutrition assistance resources for them. I also spent a couple of years at the Coalition for the Homeless, creating spaces for opportunities for people to move from homelessness into housing. I spent 4.5 years, most recently, at the Rhode Island Department of Human Services. And there I oversaw policy for all of the programs administered by DHS. So all of that work, in addition, I had two interesting side hustles. I was a state representative for 4 years, and I also teach policy at the Rhode Island College School of Social Work. So I teach BSW students, undergrads who mostly want to be clinicians, and I try to make them policy lovers. And I think all of that has really put me in a unique position to do the work that I do now as an advocate. I have been an advocate. I've been the person knocking on the door of the governor, asking for more money, the person who's organized sit ins and protests. I've been the elected official who people have advocated, who people have asked us for resources. I've been in those rooms where the budget decisions are made, where legislative decisions are made. I've advocated at the federal level. And then I've also been within state service, creating the policies and the regulations, seeing how those laws are actually implemented in day to day life. So, all of that together, I think, has given me a great roadmap for how to do the work that we do at the Office of Healthy Aging. And I would say that our work at Healthy Aging has two primary avenues. One is that we are the Adult Protective Services Unit for the state. So if you know of someone who you are concerned about, you think that there is a senior who is being abused, who is suffering with self-neglect, who maybe suffering with financial exploitation, we are the space that responds to that. Someone can go to our website, oha.ri.gov, like officehealthyaging.ri.gov, or call us at 462-0555, and you can report that there's someone you're concerned about. And our investigators will take that information, find out if the person is at risk or if they need services, and connect them to community case managers who can help make sure that that older person is able to be safe and be healthy in the community or wherever they choose to be. The other thing that we do at OHA is we really connect to a lot of community services to make sure that older adults and people with disabilities in Rhode Island can get services that they need. And so in that space, we manage contracts, we offer grants, we provide supports for things like food delivery through Meals on Wheels, congregate meal sites. We support and fund and are so grateful for the partnership of the 34 senior centers in Rhode Island, where people can go for socialization, for education, for food, sometimes for health screenings or tax preparation. We oversee community case management. As I mentioned, if there's a person who is experiencing issues of self-neglect, maybe of cognitive decline, we partner with extraordinarily great community partners like East Bay Community Action, West Bay Community Action, Child and Family, the Diocese of Providence. I'm going to miss one, Tri-County. And those folks can go to people in their own communities and make sure they get the resources that they need. In addition, we support classes about diabetes management, maintaining balance so you don't fall and break a hip, senior companion programs, volunteer opportunities, like the list just goes on and on. And so in that space, we're really fortunate that we are the stewards of some really important federal programs, federal dollars to make sure our community members, our seniors and people with disabilities can have really successful and happy lives in the community. And we also are a space that we can also be kind of innovative. We've recently, during COVID, we were able to implement a program called DigiAge, which got technology resources, tablets, and I think maybe just tablets actually, out to folks in the community, connecting with the University of Rhode Island cyber seniors. So college students helped people who may not be tech comfortable to be able to utilize this new technology so that they weren't so isolated at home at a time when everybody had to go indoors. And then one final thing I'll say, because I could talk your ear off, is that I'm also really excited to see how, as we grow and as we come out of the isolation that was required for COVID, that as we re-engage and get people back into communities, we also figure out ways to maintain connection with people who had limited mobility, people who were homebound for any number of reasons, for whom COVID was actually a time where they could connect more. Because for the first time, we all had to be at home. And so we prioritized finding ways to reach people in their homes. And I want to make sure that we don't lose that as those of us who are able and interested and willing go back out into spaces of shared community, that we're sure that we don't leave those folks behind who may have been able to connect more than they normally have been. So that's another thing that I'm keeping top of mind as we look towards the future with the Office of Healthy Aging.
Well, I definitely think with your long, extensive background, I definitely think that they picked the right person for the directorship of OHA. And I, for one, am extremely excited. We had a conversation, me and you, the other day of all the ways that RAMP and OHA could partner together and work together on. So I am so excited about doing all of that. But I mean, I'm telling you, you are the spit of energy, and I love it because you're just like me. So the two of us could sit for hours and talking. We need a moderator between the two of us though, to limit us, because we could go on for hours. It's amazing, but I love that you're here and your energy level and everything. Now, one thing I want to talk about and bring to our viewers, when you were talking about all the spiel, I want you to give our viewers the idea of how the elderly and the disabled community intermix, because you mentioned it a lot and I mentioned it a lot, but hearing it from somebody other than me, I might think might resonate with more people.
Yeah. Tina, I'm sure everyone hears it from you and loves it from you and learns from you, but I'm happy to add on. And one thing I was thinking, as we spoke the other day about finding ways for the Office of Healthy Aging and for RAMP to work better together, is that I think the name change is doing good for us to remember that we have an obligation to advocate for people with disabilities as much as we have an obligation to advocate for seniors. Sometimes when I meet people, I say, I'm the director of the Office of Healthy Aging. It used to be Elderly Affairs because they don't quite get it right away. But
Right,
I'm
right,
really thrilled because healthy aging really encompasses all people. It encompasses the people who are over the age of 55. It encompasses those people who do have disabilities. It encompasses my 6-year-old. Like
right.
everybody should be
Absolutely.
looking for ways to age in health in a healthy way. Having said that, I do want to be frank and say that I think that sometimes we haven't done a great job of being sure that we're lifting up the community of people with disabilities. And so I do know that my team has recently made a real effort. And I don't mean to say like they've never done this. I've only been here 2 months though. So I'll say recently, in the last 2 months, has been making an effort to be sure that we are reaching out to communities, not just of those folks who are over the age of 55, but also those folks who have disabilities. And so, for instance, they met with I'm going to not get the name correct, but the community of the deaf and hard of hearing to find ways that we can ensure that we're doing a good job reaching that community. We've recently been talking about making sure that our social media works has the captioning on it, the descriptions of what the pictures might be, so that who use assistive devices are also able to see the promotions of the work that we do. I'll also say that we contract with The Point, which is housed at United Way. That's our state's Aging and Disability Resource Center. That phone number is 462-4444. And that's a resource for anyone in Rhode Island who themselves is a senior or has a disability or is a loved one of a person who is a senior or has a disability, who needs to be connected to a resource, who needs to understand how to maybe find appropriate healthcare or nutrition assistance or activities. And then I think I'm excited to find out ways that you and I can work together. I was so excited to go to your unveiling, your ribbon cutting of Tina's table, and being sure that we are present in those spaces so we can amplify those messages and identify new spaces that we need to enter into. Tina, I want to say when I was there at your table unveiling, I was reminded of the Shirley Chisholm quote. Do you know it? And I'm going to read so I get it right. That if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I'm not sure if you've ever heard it, but I
Yeah.
thought, look at Tina. Not only did she bring a chair, she's bringing her own table. Like you've made your own table, and that's extraordinary and something that I've already shared in meetings with other people who've said to me, I want one of those tables. How do I get one of those tables? And so I think that that's just
Absolutely.
an example of how we can do good work of outreach with different communities, but also share what we learn in one space in another. I can be a kind of conduit of information sharing to make sure everyone's aware of the work that's happening.
And that's the whole plan of ramp. Is ramp wants to bring all of the resources together because we overlap, like you were saying, we overlap so many times. And instead of, duplicating so many of the resources that we have in Rhode Island, we can all work together and we can combine our resources and spend the money. Instead of duplication, we can spend the money on stuff. And yeah, I got to the point where I was sick of waiting to be invited to a table, so I made my own. Now you can all
Love
fight to be at my table because my
it.
table's pretty cool.
It
Yeah,
is.
so
It is.
that's what it's all about. When we're all sitting down, we're all the same. We're on an even playing field. We put the past behind. We try to find middle ground, and we're going to work our way out. We have to find a starting point. If all of the communities could sit at a table and find a starting point to rebuild, we
Mm-hmm.
can actually build a bigger and better world together. And that's our whole idea. But people don't understand the fact that the elderly community and the disability community mirror each other. The
Mm-hmm.
problem with it is they don't really keep track of how many in the elderly community actually use mobility devices, because most of the time it's borrowed from Uncle Frank, who passed away 6 years ago, and we kept around his wheelchair, or here's some, shower chairs that you might be able to use. Because once you get to that age and you're on SSI, your income is even more limited, and you don't have the funds. Because I'll tell you, it's a grace of God that I get a wheelchair every couple of years to replace for all the miles that I put on it. Give
And you put a
somebody,
lot of miles on. You are everywhere. So that's
uh,
wonderful.
I thank God that the state of Rhode Island is small, because I am all over it,
That's right.
all the time. And if I didn't drive, I'd be in a lot of trouble. But I want you to give everybody the sense of, some of the things where, like, actual distinction of where the elderly and disabled community collide, like where they
Hmm.
overlap. Like, can you
Sure.
give us some examples?
I think that it's really interesting to think about how, as most people age, they will end up having some sort of physical change in their lives that has them living in a way that someone with a disability that may have started much younger has always experienced. I can say just, and I often speak about how this job is kind of selfish for me. I have lots of older adults in my life that I am part of a village caring for. But I can think about how my father-in-law now is on oxygen and needs a wheelchair to get around when we take him places. Like in the home, he's able to walk more or less, but if he's going to go somewhere, he needs that. My dad did as well. As he aged, his hearing suffered and his mobility did as well. And so I became aware, I'm a policy lover, so of course I always go back to policy spaces. Like the Americans with Disabilities Act passed not that long ago, I mean within my lifetime, and those types of accommodations that were fought for so much by individuals with disabilities, using those protesting chops of blocking traffic and so forth. What they were able to do from a policy space, from a politics space, enhanced and improved not just their lives, but it also created opportunities for people as they age who then may need a mobility device or a hearing assistance device, can also now access those things because there are structures for them. It's not, and
Right.
it also helps the larger families. Like I know that as my dad and my father-in-law had mobility issues, like at first they both kind of retracted, like stayed home for a little bit. They struggled with being out in the community in a wheelchair. It was difficult for them, which was also difficult for us. We lost opportunity as a family. So even though I didn't have the mobility issues, then the ability for my dad to access the resources that he needed, things that at the Office of Healthy Aging, people can call us and say, I have this new situation and I don't know what to do. Or my dad suddenly has this new situation. And we can connect them to caregiver communities, to respite communities, to other resources like OSL, or the Ocean State Center for Independent Living, if I'm not incorrect,
Yep.
to get them the resources that they need to be able to be active. We don't want people to be hidden away in their homes because they can't maneuver or move around in a way that they used to be able to. And so for me, lifting up the needs, the resources of people with disabilities, the life experiences of people with disabilities really supports all of us, because as we age, many of us will need those resources. And even if we don't, our loved ones will. So it behooves all of us to be raising both communities at the same time.
Yeah, and the way I like to look at it to people is, how many of us have been on crutches or used a cane because we sprained an ankle, broken a knee, had a hip replacement, hurt our back, and we just
Mhm.
can't pick up our legs because we're in so much pain. Those are minor and temporary, and you will heal. But some people don't heal. Some people don't get better, and you're now just paving the way by being accessible, by being inclusive, by learning about those things now. You're paving the way for others in your family, your loved ones. So you're learning how to take care of them. And one thing I can't stress enough to people is, do not count people out because they use mobility devices or
That's
they're
right.
aging. Don't let them stay in their homes. Don't let them retract. Give them a little bit of time, but bring them out. Get them back into life as soon as possible, because there's a lot of life left to live, and it is a precious time. We need to get them out. And this is what our two agencies do, is we help you get the people back out as soon as possible into the world, and let them know that they still have a lot to offer
That's
so
right.
many other people. Do you have anything to add to that?
So the only thing I would just say, applaud that statement. I mean, I think a lot of times people feel a little lost or confused when there's some sort of life shift that limits their mobility or changes the way that they interact with the world, and it can be unsettling. And so hearing someone like you talk about how there's still things to do, is inspiring to see someone in a wheelchair able to go out and not pausing for a second, as far as I can tell. um, and it can really make them see possibility. And again, it's a space where at the Office of Healthy Aging, we can help people maneuver those things and help connect them to support groups, help them to connect to resources. Though we at our office are not the direct service providers in that way, we can be the connectors. And we have a ton of resources on our website, oha.ri.gov, to help people to connect to different community resources that can help meet their needs. And I'll also say, being new, I'm not really stuck in my ways in any way. And so if you had a brilliant idea, or anyone watching has a brilliant idea of, a service that they don't know exists, or a service that they think could be improved, I am open to suggestion, because I'm not an expert in this space. I certainly have lived experience with older relatives and people with mobility issues, and with other physical disabilities, but my experience is not universal, nor is it entirely true for everyone. I guess that's the same thing, universal and entirely true for everyone. So
Yeah.
we need to have everyone's voice participating to ensure that we're meeting everyone's needs.
It's such a breath of fresh air to hear you say that we're not perfect. I am in the disability community. I run a nonprofit for accessibility, but I don't know everything for every disability. I know for the mobility device feeling, but I may not know for autism, or for an elder adult, or for another. So we welcome the idea of telling us, because you're not going to be the first. If you have a question, somebody else is going to have that same question. It doesn't hurt to ask. Maybe there's something that you can think of that you know about that Maria can make happen and implement, or I can make happen and implement. So always reach out and make sure you're having your voice heard, because you might be the next person who has the next brilliant idea, or the next Tina's table, per se, to say that, we have something new now that we can, go after and make life easier for the people experiencing this.
It's so true. And the other thing that I always think about from a personal space is about the power of intergenerational activities too, and about exposure and just being seen in different ways. The kind of idea of representation matters. And so for young people who have a disability, to see leaders in their community who have a similar life experience can be very powerful. And similarly, when I was little, I think I was maybe 7 years old, my mom had a part-time job as a note taker at CCRI. So she accompanied a gentleman who was blind to his classes and took notes for him, and read them to him. And I think they were somehow translated into Braille, but he became a close family friend. And so he came to Thanksgiving every year and to 4th of July parties, and like learning at a young age, having that experience of having someone who is blind in my home, learning about the canes, learning about describing like the food on the plate by the clock. I don't even know if that's standard practice anymore, but those kinds of things are important. And I think historically, we've often as a society hidden people away. And so as the advocate in the state for seniors and for people with disabilities, I want to make sure that we're celebrating and bringing them to the forefront. There's so much to contribute, from life experiences to long life. They have so much to contribute to our larger community. And otherwise, like, it's just too sad to think that we wouldn't, for them
Well,
and
that's
for us, what we would miss out on.
I mean, our elder community, that's our history. That's our older
Mhm.
generation. They have so many stories that could benefit and improve your life and let you know. There's so many of them with vis and vinegar, as I say. They're wonderful people. And if you're not interacting with the disabled community, you are missing out on some truly amazing people. Because I'll tell you, if you don't want to talk to people in wheelchairs, you're missing out on me. And I know you get to spend an hour with me every week, but it's so true. Like so many people will just look at me that I'm in a wheelchair and think of all of the things that I can't do. How about all of the
Mhm.
things that I have done and accomplished? You could be that same person. You can do what you do. And there are people looking up to me just like there's people looking up to every one of you. And if you're able bodied, don't think that you're out of the spotlight because
Mhm.
they're looking up to you to see how you treat your elders and the disabled around you. So you need to be stepping up. But what are some, I know you say you always bring it back to policy, and I
I
love
do.
that because I love changing policy. Tell me some of the things that you're working on, in your couple of months that you've been there. Like, what are your top priorities right now?
So I let me start with some excitement from the recent budget, the legislative wins. And these are not specifically driven by the Office of Healthy Aging, but we're very excited about them. That the Let RI Vote Act is expanding access to voting for people across the state, but specifically people who may have challenges getting out, getting to a polling place. There's a change in the laws around accessory dwelling units. So giving people an opportunity to age where they'd like to age. Maybe someone wants to move out of their two-story home that they raised their children with. They don't want to move into assisted living, but their child has a yard large enough for an in-law or a granny flat or whatever you want to call that. There's an opportunity now for us to create more of those accessible housing spaces. And I know, Tina, you and I have been talking about the need for housing. Housing is a crisis in Rhode Island for all people, but we need to be sure that we're centering seniors and people with disabilities in our housing discussions. The housing that we create needs to be accessible, it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be available. So, like, accessible in that utilizing universal design, you making sure doorways are wide enough, making sure that they're safe, that there's housing available at one level, but also available, that we can find it, that we can build it in
Right.
places where people want to live at price points that they can afford. As you mentioned, if you're on SSI, if you're on Social Security supplemental income, excuse me, not Social Security supplemental income, just SSI, that amount set by the federal government is literally at poverty level income. Like, we as a nation have kept people with disabilities living in poverty. And it's just abhorrent. What does that say about who we value and what we value about people? And I know that there's some efforts at the federal level to address that, so we don't restrict people with disabilities to a lifetime of poverty, because that's just it's just terrible. I'll also say that there were some great things coming out of for the SNAP program. The Department of Human Services will now be creating a shorter application for SNAP benefits, formerly known as food stamps, for seniors and individuals with disabilities. So it will be a slightly shorter application, but with a longer certification period. So rather than having to reapply for benefits annually, some people will be able to maintain benefits for 3 years. Now, it's going to take a few months for that to be implemented. So no one should call right now and say, what's going on? How do I do it? But it's really exciting as a nutrition access piece. And we were also thrilled that the governor put additional funds in his budget for Meals on Wheels, which over the last year or so implemented culturally appropriate meals where people who get those deliveries can get their traditional, I guess, American food. They can now choose from a Latin menu or an Asian menu, both for people for whom that's their cultural heritage, but also maybe just for someone who appreciates diversity in their food. I know I do. That would be exciting for me. And
Oh,
additionally,
absolutely.
additionally, there was some additional funds provided through the governor's budget for senior services. So we're excited to think about what we may be able to do to innovate in that space, to meet people with new programs that will help them to connect to each other and connect to the things that they need.
Yeah, and also the big win that we got was the home modification grant.
Yeah.
Is
I'm
now
sorry I
a
didn't mention
permanent,
it.
yeah, is a permanent position in the budget, and I believe they just got a $500,000 more a year that is added to that budget, so we can take care of more and more people. Because I'll tell you, we're the only state that has it as a grant program
Mm,
in any way as of right now. Mass and Connecticut are copying us at this moment because I'm working with those states, so they're copying us at this moment on the grant. But we have waiting lists for that grant. We have to turn people away because we ran
hmm.
out of money. And this is what people want to do with COVID. They want to age in place. They want to stay in their
Right.
homes. They want to stay with the people. So that was another huge win. Now, next we'll be advocating for more money for accessibility and for wheelchairs, because they keep us at a poverty level. I mean, most people on SSDI aren't even bringing home $1,000 a month. Who can pay their rent, gas, electric,
Right.
you know what I mean, and whatever that they need on that. Plus, pay. I just paid $3,000 of new equipment in my wheelchair: wheels, tires, batteries. All of the things that wear and tear for the 20 miles I put on my wheelchair a day, going around the state of Rhode Island. But we're not allowed to have savings. We're not allowed to have
No.
this, that we need more rights. We need, so we have come a long way, but we still have a long fight ahead of us. And we're only going to do it with organizations like ours, all working together. I'm just so excited for, like I said, you just give me a new boost, because, it's a new partnership and you're so much like me. So I just love this partnership. It is
No,
so great.
there's
What
and
are
there's
some of the,
power. There's power in our community, and we estimate that by 2040, 1 in 4 Rhode Islanders will be over the age of 65. That's a huge number. And when you think also how seniors also have really great voting records, there's a lot of power in this population of people. It's always been kind of a question for me how we can have such a large population of people, of seniors and people with disabilities who have such political power, and yet we're not doing all that we can as a community to make sure that their needs are met. And so that is certainly a priority of mine.
And the other priority is all of those people that are that age plus the disability community. You're talking about almost 50% of Rhode Island using mobility devices, either
Hmm.
temporarily or permanently. How can you as a business survive when you're alienating half of the population? Now, you need to remember, you're not only alienating those 50% of people, you're also alienating their loved ones, their friends, their family, because we usually go out in droves. I mean, we're not a gang, but we usually, because we can't go to personal homes, they're not
Right,
accessible. So
right.
we have to meet at public spaces. We have to meet at public restaurants. We need you to be accessible so you're not missing out on half the population's money. We have
Yeah,
money,
when
let us spend it.
you spoke about that at the unveiling of your table and about going offering to go to a restaurant, I think was being developed, and you offered to do a roll through to make sure that it was
Yeah.
accessible to you. And I'm excited to have you come to my office, not just to visit, but also to make sure that our office is accessible, that let's make sure that there's nothing that we've overlooked that would prevent someone who needed a mobility device from being able to access us. And so I'm excited to have you come out to do that as well.
Yeah, and every business should do it, because you can think like there is a bathroom that I was recently using, and it's in a state building. I'm not going to say which one because I don't throw anybody under the bus, but it has all of the right square footing and all of the wrong dimensions. The only way that
Mhm.
I could use the free space in that bathroom was to pass the toilet, and there's no way. So yes, you have the right square footing, but it is in the wrong direction. So it's
Right.
not workable. So not only does it need to be the right square footing, it needs to be in a workable, and it was an easy fix. I talked to the building, I showed them how to fix it, I told them what they need to do, and it's being worked on at the moment because they didn't realize that
Hmm.
it wasn't workable. So
And
having somebody come in who actually utilizes it is what's important.
and what a great example of advocacy too, like that you experienced something that was like meeting the letter of the law but didn't actually do what the spirit of the law was intended to do, and to raise that and have it addressed, because I have to imagine that whoever was designing that bathroom wasn't thinking, ha ha ha, Tina's not going to be able to get in here. Like they probably
Yeah,
just
right.
didn't know. And that's why it's so important, again, to have full representation of people with disabilities and mobility issues, seniors, in these spaces, when we're talking about housing, when we're talking about transportation, when we're talking about healthcare, that we're looking at a continuum of life and ensuring that people along that continuum are able to access it. I broke my ankle when I was 34 weeks pregnant. It was quite an ordeal, and was because of my size at the moment. I actually did use a wheelchair on an occasion, and also had a great Neil scooter to get me from point A to point B. And the things I learned, like things I thought I knew from pushing my dad in a wheelchair, like I had no idea. No idea. And just having people, and not that you should be responsible to educate us all, but just having greater integration in all spaces of society will lead to better outcomes for all of us.
No, it's so true. And everybody that comes out with me or I do roll throughs with the city of Providence or in and around Rhode Island, they didn't realize like how many restaurants I will call and they're like, yeah, we're accessible. It's only one step. I'm like, well, when you walk through that wall, I will do the one step because it's probably about the same comparison. And
Mhm.
the money that you would dish out if you drop my wheelchair picking me up over that one step or whatever, a $200 suitcase rent would have fixed that problem. That no one does it maliciously. No one,
Right.
I truly believe nobody does it maliciously. They do it because they don't know. So why approach screaming and yelling at somebody when you can give them real word numbers, grants that will help them pay for it, figures that will help them, tax breaks that will help them pay for it, and walk them through it, as I call it, accessibility for dummies. Like, I don't know how to run a computer, so I use computer for dummies. So now you have accessibility for dummies of the things you didn't know, and I am going to be your crash dummy
Right.
to show you all of the things that you don't know, and
Right.
do it in a positive, non-judgmental way to help you instead of harming you.
And Tina, that's something too, that through the Office of Healthy Aging, people can be connected to those types of resources through our caregiver support group, as people are caring for parents or loved ones who are seeing physical or cognitive decline and are just trying to figure out where to go and how to get that support, whether it be in terms of accessibility of physical structure or of other types of supports. Or I have to also say of respite, like if you're caring for a loved one, that is a lot of work. That is a lot of work.
Yeah,
And so we need to be able to also give people the space to take time and to and make sure that that's something that doesn't come with judgment. Like you can love someone very much and still need some time away. And so we
yeah,
create systems to support that, so that no one is getting burnt out from the good work that they're doing caring for a loved one or caring for themselves, that they get
yeah,
that kind of support. People don't have to be alone in this, whether there's a new disability in their lives, or just they're just tired, or because they've
yeah,
aged and they need that support. No one has to be alone in this. And so that's something that I really want to stress, that there are resources through our office. And again, you can find a lot of them at oha.ri.gov. And there are resources through Point, which is an information and referral and aging and disability resource center here in Rhode Island. So you will talk to Rhode Islanders. They will understand your accent and your landmarks of places that used to be there. And that number is 462-4444. We don't want people to be overwhelmed through these things that are very challenging. And we want them to
yeah.
still be able to find exciting new things to do with their lives, whether they're older or have a disability or just getting through the day.
Yeah, I mean, caregiver burnout is a real thing, and you can't take care of your loved one if you're not take caring yourself. So there's support groups and everything that. And I love your reference that in Rhode Island, you're not a true Rhode Islander if you haven't said, go down the street and turn where the old Elmex used to be.
That's
If you
right.
haven't said
And
that
Benny's,
sentence, you're not true Rhode Islander.
it's so true.
Yeah,
It's how I
but I
indoctrinate
have
the people.
Yeah, I have a good question for you, and this is going to be a tricky one. So if you can't answer it, I totally understand, but it just popped into my head. When you took over, since you've only been there a couple of months, what was the most surprising thing to this date that either wasn't happening or that is happening that you didn't know about?
Well, I don't know that it was most surprising, but what pops first to mind is that I was unfamiliar with our DigiH work. I was not aware of this technology program that was developed during the time of COVID, where we provided technology resources to adults in the community and that supports through cyber students, cyber seniors at URI to help people learn how to use those devices. I had no idea about that. There was a subset of that program that also gave devices to people being discharged from nursing homes so that as they return to their home, they have access to these online resources. And they may be things like so many doctor's appointments now, healthcare portals, like having so much of that is technology driven, or it could be like being able to Zoom with grandchildren or do a health visit or just scroll through Facebook or whatever, watch your shows, Tina. We
Yes.
should start, we should load them all with your programming all the time. I'll make a note to do that. So that was a really exciting thing to learn about those ways that we're building connection. And again, as I said earlier, COVID was a terrible time for us all. And but there were these little silver lining moments. When we were in the deep of COVID, I was working at the Department of Human Services, and I got call after call after call about how there were SNAP recipients who had money on their EBT cards. They had money to buy food and couldn't get it because at the time our federal partners didn't allow people to pay for food online with their EBT cards. And like miracle of miracles, the government moved in about 6 to 8 weeks, and suddenly people could shop online with their EBT cards. And that is staying. That's staying even though the pandemic is shifting. So people who are low income and get nutrition assistance through SNAP can, if they have technology resources, log on and buy their food through Stop and Shop or through Aldi's or through, now I feel like I need to name them all, through Amazon and Walmart, through BJ's, and they can buy their food and have it delivered to them, which is amazing. Before COVID, there were people who struggled to buy food for mobility issues, either because of physical mobility or not having a car, not being on a bus line, having kids that are difficult to take grocery shopping. That's been a game changer. And I think similarly, we want to remember, and I'm talking to my team about making sure that as we go back to in person, we're not forgetting the people for whom COVID gave them access to things that they didn't have when the people who were decision makers could get out into the world and live their lives. It's not like there was no one homebound before COVID. It just made us all aware of what that experience
All right.
can be like. And I want to make sure that we're maintaining those connections as we move forward.
And on the flip side of that, the one thing that I want to be cautious about with that is just because the access is there, remember that your people of disability in your lives or your elders in your life want to get out. You
Yeah,
didn't like staying home, you didn't like being
right.
home. So just because you can Zoom them and just because they can do this doesn't mean that that's the way that they want to do it
That's right.
100% of the time.
Yes.
So make sure that you're not overly using that. We still want to get out and about and be seen and be heard. And I need to show off my wheelchair every now and again. So I need to get out and about. So make sure you're taking them out with you when you're doing
Absolutely.
that.
Yes.
I mean, so those are so anything else that you can think of off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I think we're just looking to grow into new spaces to make sure that we're really prioritizing our equity work, making sure that we're getting into communities, different cultural communities, making sure that our work is accessible to people who speak different languages, to people who have different communication needs. And so that's another priority of what we're focusing on right now at OHA.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I love everything that you do. Um, Anything else that we missed that I didn't bring up about OHA that you think that the world needs to know about?
I don't think that there's anything that I can't think of anything that we missed that's like a high level thing, but I do want to just give another couple of plugs, if I may. To remind folks that
Absolutely.
the point is a resource for you. If you are a senior or you're a person with a disability or a person who cares about a senior or a person with disabilities, call the point. It's 462-4444. It's a place to be connected to resources, like basic need resources. If you need help identifying food resources or healthcare resources or community connection, it's a strong office of support. And also, I want to remind folks that though we are not exclusively about vulnerable seniors at OHA, and I want to be celebrating people who are, did you see the CCRI speaker was, I think, over 60 years old, getting his degree. Like, I love that. We want to amplify the real extraordinary activities of older adults and people with disabilities. But I don't want to overlook the fact that we know that there are seniors and people with disabilities who are subject to abuse, to financial exploitation, to self neglect. And if you know or love someone, have concern about someone in that space, they can call our office at 462-0555 or on our website, oha.ri.gov. You can be connected to a whole host of resources, but there's also a tab there for reporting elder abuse as well.
And don't forget that it doesn't harm to, even if you suspect, to make the call and find out what the resources are, because
That's right.
you would hate to live with yourself afterwards saying, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. And then it's too late. So
That's right.
make sure you're reaching out and you're asking that question. It's all in secret. It's all, nobody knows. No one's going to, fault you for making a false claim because you cared about somebody. So if you're not sure, make the call anyway, because
Yes.
you want to make sure, and that's for elder abuse or people with disabilities, because I'll tell you, there's a lot of ride buses at MTM, and I'm not saying this, but if you know or hear, if you see something, say something. That
That's
is
right.
the key. You don't know,
And
so
rely
you're
on us.
talking about a community.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tina. I wanted to just say
Yeah.
that's such great guidance that you just gave. We have the experts. We have teams of folks who are trained as intake workers, as screeners. If we get a call and it doesn't rise to the level of abuse, we will still offer a referral to a resource, because if you're seeing something, there probably is not necessarily abuse, but something that somebody needs to be connected to, even if it's connected to a senior center, connected to a community center, connected to something, so that their quality of life improves. So don't worry about getting in trouble yourself or making the wrong call. We'll take care of that. It's better that we're taking care of one another. Isn't that, like, that's what we're called to do. We're called to take care of one another. And so I hope that that's what we can all accomplish together.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Well, now that we're nearing the end of the hour, I'm going to ask you to give your final plea of why everybody should contact the amazing Marina Samini, the new director of OHA. Why should they be contacting your office? So ready, go.
So first and foremost, they should contact us if they or someone that they love is a senior or an older adult or a person with disability who has a need. If they need a basic need, if they need connection to resources, if they're clueless and they don't know where to turn, we are a place that they can turn to get supports, get connected to community, so that they're not feeling so isolated and that they're able to engage with the world. But I also would love to hear from anyone who has a brilliant idea. Like, we know that people with disabilities, that seniors have a lot to offer. They start new jobs, they start new careers, they start new businesses, they act as volunteers, they continue their educations. They're important members of our community. So if you have a great idea, I want to hear that too, so that we can make sure that we're learning from everyone and serving people in the way that they need to be served, connected to the things that they need. As we talked about earlier, no one person's experience is universal. So we need everyone. I've recently said, it's a common saying, it takes a village to raise children. It also takes a village to support all of us. So let's be in village with one another. Let's build that village for one another and rely on OHA. We're the advocates for you.
I absolutely love that. I absolutely love you. I cannot wait to watch OHA grow under your helm. I'm so excited for all of that. So thank you so much for taking the time tonight and telling all of us about OHA and letting them get to have a little bit of insider information on Miss Maria Samini, the new director of OHA. I'm excited to work with you. So thank you so much for taking the time for being with us tonight.
Oh, thank you. I hope you'll have me back again. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. We're gonna have you back more than you're gonna want to. But I look forward to it. So thank you. And I welcome everybody back next week. The next 4 weeks are going to be a little bit different. There will be a podcast for the next 4 weeks, but we will be having a guest host, Miss Diana Perkins, the owner of Include Design, the creator of the Lap Snap, will be the host because I will be getting ready for the national competition and traveling to Florida to compete as the only person of disability for a national title at the end of the month. So I am handing over the reins to Miss Diana Perkins for the next 4 weeks. So still tune in every Wednesday night, same time, same channel, 7 o'clock on all the best ways that you can watch my show. And I will be back with you on August 10th, and we will be talking about the Accessibility is Beautiful event on September 10th. It'll be 1 month out. So the next 4 weeks, you'll be in Diana's hands, and then 1 week off, and then I will be back, and we will be talking everything Accessibility is Beautiful for the next month. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you. So thank you all so much for tuning in. You continue to tune in every week to find out about the fabulous resources we have here in Rhode Island and around the country. And as I always say, don't just sit there, make a difference. Have a great night, everybody.
And you've got to be tough as nails. Ashley Kalis was driven to achieve. Today, Kalis is still fueled by that same hope, grit, and determination. A mother of 3 school-aged boys and successful business owner who ran testing and vaccination sites across the state. Kalis is the fighter Rhode Island needs right now because it's time for a change. Ashley Kalis for governor.